has taken over. Let's go. It's Ferrall. Coast to coast. Steaks, chicks, stacks. You and I are going to make a lot of money. It's Ferrall, coast to coast.
It's Ferrall Coast to Coast in the biggest way possible right here on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us on a Monday. Carver High in for Scotty. We've got the mayor of Miami, Joe Raineri, with me as well. We'll bring him in a moment. A lot to do today. NFL regular season over with as we now head to the playoffs. That's right, serious January football, which will get underway this weekend. Only 14 teams left. Only 2 of them are going to be in New Orleans in a couple of weeks. So we've got all of that. And don't forget, if the regular season's over, that also means a lot of guys getting chopped. So we'll talk about that as well. We've got a big lineup today. Gabe Morency will be with us in the first hour, as always, from Sports Rage Late Night. We've got Adam Kaufman in hour number 2 as Mayo chopped after 1 year in Boston. So we'll do some of that with Adam. And then the Sportsbook consigliere, Dave Sharapan, in the final hour as we get ready for the playoffs and do several other things with Dave as well. As I mentioned, no Scotty today as he's on his way back from Pittsburgh. We'll find out tomorrow how his night went Saturday night at the place the Steelers play. I'm going to guess it wasn't that great considering how cold it was and the result of the game. But we will hear all from that from Scotty tomorrow here on Coast to Coast. Today you get me and the mayor of Miami, Joe Raineri. Hi, Joe. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you, Carver. I did take minus 125 that he lost a toe in the game there. That Ferrall might have had a little frostbite, a little bit of an issue there, and then ran away.
Well, he tweeted out that video and the pictures. He had that big steak at the Capitol Grill before he went over there to the stadium, so hopefully that kept him warm during that night at the place the Steelers play, because it's a long walk back. I always say, Joe, when you go away to see your team play, and I used to think, remember, I went to Buffalo before I had kids and I got married. I went to Buffalo every year. I split season tickets with guys. I had 2 or 3 games a year. I go up there. And then remember, this is the height of the Bills drought. Not now. Now it'd be great. Not the Josh Allen Bills. This was the mid-2000s, Doug Williams and Dick Duran Buffalo Bills. That was that time when all of that was going on. When you go to see your team play somewhere and you spend the time and the travel and the money and you go and they lose, it's misery. It's absolute misery when you spend all that time going. So I know how Scotty feels because I did that a lot as a Bill fan back in the day, that's for sure. We have got plenty to do here today as we are finally done. We had a lot of nonsense games yesterday. We had a lot of teams. It seems like, Joe, it's funny how they kind of now, even the broadcasts of the games, they've now molded those Week 18 awful games just down into talking about who's going to make money every catch that they make or every sack that they get. It's funny how they've turned to that as to be a reason to try to keep people to watching these awful Week 18 games. Everybody knew about every single incentive that every player had out on the field, and even the broadcasters were telling you every single thing that went on with that. But, Joe, we could turn the page now, and we can get to the real thing. We've got 6 matchups this weekend. NFL playoffs are set. We know the path to the Super Bowl, and now we get really the best month of the year when it comes to the NFL, and we find out who's the best of the best.
Yeah, I got to tell you, there wasn't a whole lot of drama yesterday, though I guess the Bucks game was maybe the quintessential Week 18 game because it had a little bit of what you're talking about. They had to win in order to be in. For most of that game, it looked like they weren't going to win. And then when they finally had the game in hand, they had a chance, one more play to rip out Mike Evans and to get him his record. And they were going ballistic on the broadcast because of it. So that game kind of had everything that summed up what Week 18 was all about.
It certainly did. And then you had other games like the Bronco-Chief game where the Broncos obviously needed to get in, but it was you talk about one team bringing an exhibition football to the stadium in Week 18. That was what the Kansas City Chiefs did. I'm sure the Bengals were thrilled with the effort that the Chiefs put forth on Sunday afternoon in Denver. I thought the Lion-Viking game was pretty good for a little while. And then Minnesota just now, it looked like Darnold was last night the night, Joe, that Darnold turns into a pumpkin as we head into the playoffs here this week, because he had a tremendous year, but man, he was awful all those times they were going for it on fourth down inside the red zone last night.
Well, but he was also under constant duress. So, we wondered how long it was going to take with those injuries on the offensive line to Minnesota. How long before that started to rear its ugly head? Well, we got a really good look at it last night because he was gun shy by the time they got to the second half. He was getting hit left and right, and boy, oh boy, give credit to that new and improved all of a sudden defense of Detroit, which was supposed to be the weakest part of that team, isn't it, Carver?
Supposed to be the weakest part of that team, but they certainly didn't play that role in that season finale on Sunday night. They look like a team that's now going to get 2 weeks to heal up, get rested, and get themselves ready for a run to the big game in their own building, which is what they have now earned. We have a couple pretty good matchups. We'll give you all the numbers for those matchups for the first time today. Saturday, they love sticking the Texans in that Saturday 4:30 East game. Texans, Chargers. You'll have the Steelers and the Ravens round 3 on Saturday night. Bills, Broncos on Sunday from the AFC, and then Eagles, Packers, Bucks, and Washington. And the Monday night game next week, you will have those Vikings going to Los Angeles against the Rams. So not only do we have playoff games, Joe, but we have I guess what they still call Black Monday, even though everybody gets a start on it now, Sunday, of all the firings and guys getting chopped around the league. I guess not as many as maybe you would have thought so far. Gerard Mayo, one and done in New England. Doug Peterson out in Jacksonville. But, some of the guys we've talked about for weeks, Joe, all of, Dable staying around, Mike McDaniel in Miami staying around. Nothing yet, of course, with Mike McCarthy, but, I saw Antonio Pierce doing a press conference an hour ago in Vegas. Didn't seem like he was going anywhere, so I guess not as many as maybe we would have thought, at least so far, Joe, so far.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, of all the weirdest one, listen, I didn't think Mayo was going to be around after this year anyway. The fact that they wasted no time after they finally won a game is pretty funny. But the thing that took me away was this morning, all of a sudden Mara's now taking out full-page ads explaining to everyone how he's not fired. They're even telling you they're not firing their general managers and coach. Now that's apparently an announcement on this Black Monday here. I don't understand. If you're keeping your coach and GM, how about you say nothing? How about that? I think that works out pretty well since they're still under contract, no?
Yeah, he did the press conference, the press release, basically did a whole tour. And then when you listen to him, and I have a clip of him later, but you listen to the whole thing of him today, he even sounds like he still doesn't seem sure that he did it. Like he seems a little very much like, well, we'll see. I'm not sure the team's better. I don't know how long they've got. Yep. That is going to be an ugly situation. You could just tell that it's not going to end well for those guys unless they go, 11-6 next year, 10-7 to get themselves back into the playoffs. So we have a lot to do today, Joe. We have all the NFL that we'll discuss. By the way, Joe, did you throw your name in the hat? Everybody's interviewing for the Jet jobs. Head coach, GM. If you have stepped foot in an NFL facility, you get to interview for a job with the Jets. So you got that. Lots of NBA tonight. We've got hockey tonight. We've got college basketball tonight. Plenty to do. Coast to coast on a Monday. We're back after this. I don't like to toot my own horn, and I know that I'm setting myself up for probably disappointment later tonight, but I hope you were with us last week on the Final Five, because we almost swept the board. We had 2 out of 3 on the power play points with Reinhart and Matthews. We hit the goal scorer line A. We hit the side with Washington. We hit the total with the over in Toronto and Buffalo. So we had a really good Final Five last week, and I'm hoping that we can now ride that wave.
Only on SportsGrid.
50 points in a fourth quarter for the Atlanta Hawks. Like, what is going on? It's like circus numbers. What are we doing?
And we sound like two old heads complaining. It's a tough watch. It's a tough watch sometimes. I don't mind the shooting. I just know the numbers. Like, when you strictly look at it from the numbers in betting, it's getting really hard to bet.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Ferrall Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
The NBA will take center stage once football stops, and people will watch the NBA playoffs and all that. But the standings are whacked out in the Western Conference. Like, Oklahoma City, Memphis, and the Houston Rockets are the best teams in the conference.
You want to talk about a team with overs and no defense? The Wizards are your team. It's unbelievable. They can't make a total high enough. It's nuts.
Sports Rage tonight. Weeknights 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
And we are back, Ferrall, coast to coast, here on a Monday. Carver High in for Scotty on SportsGrid at SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us, of course. NFL regular season over. On to the playoffs we go. Guys getting chopped today, so plenty to do. Gabe Morency's with us, of course, every day on C2C. You can catch Sports Rage late night, weeknights at 10 p.m. East, right here on the grid. Gabe, good to see you as always. And now we can get done. It was tough yesterday, not going to lie. There was a few games that I guess if you had some props, if they allowed you to bet some of them with some of these guys that were kind of thrown in these games, Josh Dobbs and other guys, I guess you could have had a pretty fun day. But for the most part, Gabe, it was tough sledding throughout Sunday in the NFL. Some crazy games, some really bad games, and then you had the Lion-Viking game to finish things off last night.
I would have been better off not waking up on Sunday afternoon to watch these games and bet on these games. And I knew going in, I warned everybody, I don't really like this, but it was like, I don't know, I'm going to bet this. So I was really, just sitting there. I guess I'll do this. And I put this, there were all these reluctant bets. And I never really went big on anything during the afternoon, like the 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock. I never really went too big on the games. But at the end of the day, I was like, damn, I don't know how I just lost a dime on a single game that I didn't even like one of them. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm down $800. I was like, this is just effing great. I don't even like these games, and I'm losing money. And then I did the old, well, we got the big one tonight, and I'm going to get it back tonight with all the props and all that, and whatever, dude. Yeah. It was a complete disaster, train wreck yesterday. I missed the bowl season, bro. We lit those bowl games up, bro. And then it was like, oh, God, back to the NFL. When's the next bowl game on? Thank God we do have a college football game on tonight, and I can't wait for it. But, yeah, it was a rough couple of weeks in the NFL. It wasn't the greatest year. There's a bunch of good teams in the NFL, so the playoffs are going to be lit, right? I can't really remember when we've had, literally, 6 teams you could say, yeah, they can win the Super Bowl. Normally it's like, well, who can beat Kansas City? Who can beat New England, etc. It is wide open. But there was a lot of bad football played every Sunday in the NFL this year, Carver. There was a lot of bad teams too, bro.
I think you said it, especially coming down the stretch. I thought the last couple 3 or 4 weeks.
Month.
There was some, but look, you look at it, there was some, I think historically, this is one of the, can you remember a year, like there was 10 teams, I think that you look at the top 10 of the NFL draft. Usually if you won 5 games, you were going to pick between 1 and like 5 or 6. Like,
bro, you win 3 games, you're guaranteed a top 3 pick. Now it's like, yeah, you're going 9th. Like, you know what I mean?
5 wins used to get you in the top 5 almost always. You might not have the first pick, but you got 5-win teams picking 10th this year.
Yeah, but these aren't tanking. They weren't tanking. They're just bad. That's just how bad they are. That's just how bad. Look at the Cleveland Browns. Like, there's word now that Deshaun Watson's Achilles surgery didn't go well. It's like, okay. Well, like, even if it did, right? And now you hear, and I don't know, there's all kinds of reports, but that the Browns are thinking about bringing Kirk Cousins in. Oh, that's a great idea. Like, for the Cleveland Browns. Like,
sure.
I've said this all the time, Mike, about salary caps, bro. It sort of comes together here. People like in baseball, you need a salary cap. You need this. The Cleveland Browns suck before the salary cap existed. They suck with a salary cap. If you're a bad organization, it doesn't matter whether there's a salary cap or not. You're a bad organization, and you won't win. It's simple as that. The New York Jets are another one. Whatever.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's just a bunch of teams, huff and puff and do this and do that and bring in this. I think they interviewed Brian Greasy now for the head coaching job.
Well, we just joked about this game. If you've stepped foot in an NFL facility in your life, you're interviewing for either the head coach or the GM of the Jets. I was making the list to tell Joe before. I stopped making it. Anybody you can think of, they've requested to interview with. I mean, Brian Greasy, Anthony Lynn, Rex Ryan. I mean, all these names that get thrown around.
They announce it all, too.
Kidding me.
Remember the old days, Carver, when it used to be like they met in secret? You know what I mean? It'd be like, yeah, we met someone in secret. Yeah, we're not telling you who we're meeting for coaching jobs. We're not giving ID. We're not letting you know what we're doing. The Jets literally eagerly go on social media. I'm assuming it's Johnson's kid probably. He goes on social media. We interviewed Mike Vrabel, and they just sit back and wait for the response. All right, this is what the fans want. And if you recall, earlier in the year, actually, Adam Schefter actually said that there's a feeling in the Jets building that they run things via online and what popular fan opinion is. And I think it's totally clear. Like, they literally kick back, you know what I mean? And they're like, all right, well, we got the most positive result for Vrabel. Because they don't really know who the best coach is. They don't really know what they're doing. So they're to the point where it's like people's choice, Carver.
But,
you know what I mean?
But in typical Jet fashion, them interviewing Vrabel was really just Vrabel using them to force Kraft to fire Mayo so that he would go and hire. Because Vrabel's going to be the coach.
Everybody wants Vrabel. The Raiders want Vrabel. Everybody wants Vrabel. He's just breaking the ice.
But he's going to be the Patriot coach. He's going to be the coach of the Patriots. I just don't see any way he's not. Like, you're going to see it come together real fast. I think that if he would have got fired sooner last year, Kraft maybe would have did things differently. I think when he saw Vrabel get fired, he already told Mayo he was getting the job. He couldn't go back on it at that point. So I think that this is all set in stone. I don't think Mayo gets fired if Vrabel wasn't available. As bad as he was this year.
This all leads to our Bills. The division's a train wreck. The Patriots, the Jets, the Dolphins.
Keep it up.
It won't be forever. If not now, when? And, I've been a Bills fan, bro, since the 70s. So I've seen it all, from like really, the bad, the good, the ugly, and everything. I've been through it all. And I'm kind of worn out a little bit in the sense I don't get my hopes up, in the past. You know what I mean? In the past few years, it'd be like, oh, we're going to win, right, Morency? It's like, no, we could. But, don't forget about our history and something's going to happen. This year feels different. Every couple of years, Mike, I don't know, every 2 or 3 years, I talk myself into, no, this is the one. And I think you and I felt the same way when Hamlin went down and we came back. It was like, this is the one. We got the mojo going. But the fact is, we weren't better than the Bengals then. The Bengals were going to beat us before Hamlin went down that night. You could tell the way things were going. The Bengals were just sort of better. I think we're better than the Chiefs, bro. We just got to beat the freaking Baltimore Ravens in 2 weeks, buddy.
That's the problem. And it's Henry, not Lamar, that I'm worried about.
I know.
They can't stop Henry. Coast to coast. We're back right after this. don't like to toot my own horn, and I know that I'm setting myself up for probably disappointment later tonight, but I hope you were with us last week on the Final Five, because we almost swept the board. We had 2 out of 3 on the power play points with Reinhart and Matthews. We hit the goal scorer line A. We hit the side with Washington. We hit the total with the over in Toronto and Buffalo. So we had a really good Final Five last week, and I'm hoping that we can now ride that wave.
Only on SportsGrid.
50 points in a fourth quarter for the Atlanta Hawks. Like, what is going on? It's like circus numbers. What are we doing?
And we sound like 2 old heads complaining. It's a tough watch. It's a tough watch sometimes. I don't mind the shooting. I just know the numbers. Like, when you strictly look at it from the numbers in betting, it's getting really hard to bet.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Ferrall Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
The NBA will take center stage once football stops, and people will watch the NBA playoffs and all that. But the standings are whacked out in the Western Conference. Like, Oklahoma City, Memphis, and the Houston Rockets are the best teams in the conference.
You want to talk about a team with overs and no defense? The Wizards are your team. It's unbelievable. They can't make a total high enough. It's nuts.
Sports Rage tonight. Weeknights 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
And we are back for El Coast to Coast on a Monday. Carver High in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Gabe Morency with a Sports Rage late night. Weeknights, 10 p.m. East right here on the grid. What do you think about this since we just brought up the Bills before the break? 8.5 Sunday with the Broncos, Gabe. 8.5.
I was spoken to a lot of people. I was on last night, so I had numerous different cappers on, and everybody thinks the Bills are going to kill them, which I don't. I'm like, I don't think we're going to roll them. Like, they're pretty good. Oh, Bo Nix, a rookie. He's not really a real rookie. I mean, the kid's 25. He's played in 1 million games. Nobody's a rookie at this time of the year. He's a good quarterback, right? The Bills are better. You and I have seen this before, right? I mean, with the Buffalo Bills in these earlier games, it hasn't always been easy for them in the playoffs. Hell, Skylar Thompson and the Dolphins hung around, right? Once you get into the playoffs, guys, it's a similar situation. Like, yeah, Pittsburgh have lost 4 straight games. I'm not in a hurry to lay 10 points against them in a playoff game. Things change in the playoffs. It tightens up, man. The clock. It's like the clock is ticking double speed, guys. Tick, 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 tick. Right? Like, the Steelers are going to just run the ball. I know it's hard to run on Baltimore, but even if you get 3 yards, just chew the clock up. Like, just old school, chew the clock up, keep Lamar on the sidelines. I do think the Bills are going to win the game. I'm to the point, Mike. I've been around long enough. I don't take anything for granted. I did with the Buffalo Bills or with anybody in the NFL. But I like the Bills' edge. I think they're going to pull it off. The problem with the 8.5 is that back door swinging open, bro. Right? Bills can be up by 14 and et cetera. You get backdoored with a late touchdown. I kind of get the feeling the Bills win though. 31-17. 30-20. In that range. I think they squeeze out. The odds makers know what they're doing. I think they squeeze out like a 10-point win, but I'm not running to the window. And I don't want to be the guy that person that says what I saw last, but how the hell do you bet on Sam Darnold going to Los Angeles next week, bro? I mean, this ghost. This guy lives in a haunted house. He saw some ghosts last night, bro.
Yep, I agree. I would not be running to play the Vikings next Monday night out in L.A.
Let me just add, the Vikings like to blitz the crap out of you. Yeah, good luck blitzing Matt Stafford because he's never seen a blitz before, right? They're going to pick him apart, and they can't change their system. It is what it is. So you're going to try to rattle the quarterback. Good luck rattling Matt Stafford and Puka Nacua and Sean McVay.
The only year, I was just thinking back to it, since this Allen McDermott regime, the only year they destroyed someone in the wild card round was that Patriot game where they took out all their frustrations on the Patriots. And they,
it's like the first year without Brady or whatever. Yeah.
But
we beat them like 34-0.
You know, that Skylar Thompson game was close. The year the Colts went there.
Dude,
Rivers
the Chargers, if you're right, it was the Chargers off top of my head once. It was a super close game.
They usually it's not been easy for them on this wild card weekend, even at home, for all these games. So 8.5 could be tricky.
They do have a different edge to them. They do have a different edge to them this year, though. But I believe I'm buying in, and I don't know. I guess it's the end of the world as we know it. It's hard to believe that it could be a Buffalo Bill, Detroit Lions Super Bowl, but it really could be. But similar to the Dodgers, and no disrespect to the Yankees and the Mets because they're good. They're great teams, but Dave Roberts said it after, and I felt the same way, bro. I was like, freaking San Diego. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, man, we got to get through these guys. Like, and I told people, the winner, I said the winner of the national championship will be the Ducks or the Buckeyes. I said the winner of the World Series is going to be San Diego or L.A. And Dave Roberts said it after and all their drunk podcasts. He said, man, we were worried about San Diego the most going into the playoffs. We knew if we beat San Diego, we were going to win. And I feel the same way now about Baltimore. Like you and I talked about. Too. You get through Baltimore, we're going to beat KC, and we won't be denied in the Super Bowl. But Baltimore could beat us. Baltimore could beat us. I know we're up against it. Title game tonight. FCS championship.
FCS. Give me who you got between North Dakota State and Montana State tonight.
I'm going with the Bobcats, baby. Montana State, best FCS team in the country. Hell, these guys can play with anybody. They're 15-0. They've won 13 of their 15 games by double digits, man. All right, they beat UC Davis by 2, who's a real program going into the Mountain West, and they beat the Lobos. Remember they were like double-digit favorites against the Lobos in week 1? We all took the Lobos. Oh, how can you lay down, even though they're good? Montana State won the game, but only by 4. They came back and they won the game. All they got to do is finish this off. They haven't won a title since '84. Give me Montana State money line minus the 150. And let's go over the number, Mike. Should be a track meet in Frisco, Texas tonight. Over 56.
Yeah, lots of points for that FCS title game. Gabe, we'll see you tonight. Sports Rage late night, 10 p.m. East, right here on the Grid. I don't like to toot my own horn, and I know that I'm setting myself up for probably disappointment later tonight, but I hope you were with us last week on the Final Five because we almost swept the board. We had 2 out of 3 on the power play points with Reinhardt and Matthews. We hit the goal scorer line A. We hit the side with Washington. We hit the total with the over in Toronto and Buffalo. So we had a really good Final Five last week, and I'm hoping that we can now ride that wave.
Only on SportsGrid.
50 points in a fourth quarter for the Atlanta Hawks. Like, what is going on? It's like circus numbers. What are we doing?
And we sound like 2 old heads complaining. It's a tough watch. It's a tough watch sometimes. I don't mind the shooting. I just know the numbers. Like, when you strictly look at it from the numbers in betting, it's getting really hard to bet.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Ferrall Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
The NBA will take center stage once football stops, and people will watch the NBA playoffs and all that. But the standings are whacked out in the Western Conference. Like Oklahoma City, Memphis, and the Houston Rockets are the best teams in the conference.
You want to talk about a team with overs and no defense? The Wizards are your team. It's unbelievable. They can't make a total high enough. It's It's nuts.
Sports Rage tonight. Weeknights 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
And we are back, Ferrall, coast to coast, here on a Monday. Carver High and Joe Raineri in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us. We got a lot of NFL to do, tons of it with the regular season ending yesterday. So we're going to go through a few games from the yesterday, but we'll probably, Joe, be weaving in some of this coaching news as we move along, because today's like the day where everyone is firing in all their requests of who they want to interview, of the teams that have already fired people. There's two names that I've actually seen a lot of today from both the Bears, the Jets, I guess the Saints probably as well. I've seen Brian Flores in a few spots, and I've seen Arthur Smith in a bunch of spots, and I've seen Joe Brady, Bills offensive coordinator. So those seem to be some of the names. Now, everyone loves, Joe, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Lions. He's actually the only guy who's already told the Jets, yeah, don't call me. I'm not interested. So don't even waste your time. He's the only guy who's not going to interview for the Jet job is Ben Johnson. But I've seen, Arthur Smith. You talk about, as Scotty likes to say, recycled bottled water. Honestly, Arthur Smith and Flores. Yep. I've always been interested to see, Joe, if he'd get another crack after all the lawsuits and such a few years ago.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see some of these guys. I believe, though, that, listen, Ben Johnson has turned down a lot of interviews, probably could have been a head coach if he wanted at this particular point. But, the rumor is that he's very happy being the OC. And, not everybody wants to be a head coach. And I think we can all understand that not everybody should be a head coach. Some guys are just better coordinators. But I'll tell you this, guys like Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles is a different coach than he was his first go-around with the New York Jets. Would we all agree that what he's done in Tampa, he is a guy that has learned, he has evolved, and I'm okay with some of these guys, but it's the guys with the fourth and fifth times that it's like, come on, are we just interviewing people to interview people at this point?
It kind of feels that way. I'm very surprised to see people wanting to interview Arthur Smith. When you're talking about how Bowles changed, Bowles went down to Tampa, spent a couple years with Arians during, when he first got, Arthur Smith is 1 year removed from not doing the greatest job ever in Atlanta. I know he didn't have any quarterback at all. I get that. He had no quarterback. And now he's gone here. And, Joe, the way the Steelers finished offensively over the last 4 weeks, if we're going to give him all the credit for how well Russ played from when he went in to the beginning of December, then does he not get any blame for how they played from the last 4 weeks? You would think he should. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised he's getting a crack again this quickly. I thought he would need a couple years before somebody started banging on his door again.
No. And you got to listen, I think you also have to be very careful because there's now rumors circulating that the Titans might be moving on from Brian Callahan, too. Because it was clear he was in over his head with the Titans this year. You want that who's going to be the new great thing, right? The new hot coordinator, that would be pretty shocking that these one and dones become more and more frequent because nobody is vetting these guys. And I don't know what the expectations are. Like Brian Callahan, 1 year in Tennessee, absolute 14 losses. Terrible. They spent all of this money, but he's going to get another shot, but it wasn't good enough for New England, who had absolutely no talent. So very strange hiring cycle right now in the NFL.
It certainly is. We'll see if anyone gets added to that list. Oof. Any team gets added to that list either later today, at some point today, or in the coming days. That's for sure. All right, let's go through a few things from yesterday. Lions beat the Vikings 31-9. This was a back-and-forth game for a half. Really, the Vikings blew it by a couple of missed opportunities inside the red zone, really inside the 5, where they went for it on some fourth downs and came away with no points. Sam Darnold with a couple really bad throws. But in the second half, Jahmyr Gibbs really got going. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times. A quad for Jahmyr Gibbs last night, Westwood One Sports.
3 receivers left. Goff back in the shotgun. Gibbs in the game to his right. Goff gets the snap. Handoff Gibbs. Running left. Cuts it up. Lowers his shoulder. Powering his way to the 1. Gets a shove. He's into the end zone. Touchdown Lions. 4th touchdown tonight for Jahmyr Gibbs. This one from 3 yards out. And with 5:14 to go, the Lions lead 30-9. What a night for Jahmyr Gibbs.
You know, Joe, for those of us that like to play touchdowns and things like that, I mean, come on. I mean, do we have to be a pig and give them all to the same guy all night? We couldn't spread it around a little bit, get someone else involved. I mean, come on, Joe. We don't need one guy getting all 4 touchdowns in the game that had a total of 56.5. We could have had some other guys get in the mix.
Listen, and it's so funny because if Montgomery was still available, he would have.
Yeah.
It would have been probably 2-2. I mean, give them credit. I mean, give them credit because they, that's not exactly how they operated until they had no choice, where he had to be the feature back. And what an awful option to have, right? Like, okay, you got to go for Montgomery, your steady force, and now, okay, we're just going to keep handing it off to Gibbs. If it ain't broke, I guess don't fix it at this point. And they were plentiful rich when it came to the RB spot, haven't they been?
They certainly have. There's no question about that. And we'll see if maybe at some point in January they even get Montgomery back to go along with Gibbs. Although I would say so far Gibbs doing a pretty good job by himself. That's for sure. Here is Dan Campbell, of course. Very proud of his team, clinching the North, clinching a bye, clinching home field, all of it.
Just total team effort. Started with our defense and took the whole unit. But man, what a great job! Back-to-back division winners in the NFC North. Got the 1 seed, 15 wins. I just couldn't be more proud of those guys.
You know, Joe, he gets criticized obviously a lot for some of the crazy stuff that he does, whether that's in-game decisions, fourth down decisions, playing the guys last week in San Francisco in a game that meant nothing. I'll give him a ton of credit, Joe. He took a team that has been awful forever, and they are now they're the team to beat. He's taken them a step up every year. Last year, and I think they're going to go even a step further than they went last year, Joe, and that's all the way to New Orleans.
And he's the complete other side of the story, isn't he? As we're talking about coaching hires. Yeah. Remember when they hired him? And do you remember the ridicule about hiring Dan Campbell? And that guy is like a meathead. Doesn't he just run into brick walls? And, well, guess what? You want to talk about right guy at the right time at the right place. That's what Dan Campbell is. This team is all about, they will lay it on the line for him, and I think that's an important part of the equation. If they're going to win this, he's a big reason why. He got those guys to believe, and that'll go a long way this time of year.
It certainly will, and if there was any team, I heard them even say last night, they had their bye, I guess the first bye week, all the way back in week number 5. So for them to now get this bye, very significant for them in terms of when it comes and how banged up they are, especially defensively. And all that's going to do is serve them well. And you heard him say to O'Connell after the game, "We'll see you in 2 weeks." We'll talk about it later, Joe. I don't know if he's going to see Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings in 2 weeks. I'm not sure if they're going to get out of Los Angeles next Monday night. Definitely won't if their offense plays the way it did last night. That's for sure. Ferrall Coast to Coast on a Monday. Carver, Raineri, and Scotty, we're back. don't like to toot my own horn, and I know that I'm setting myself up for probably disappointment later tonight, but I hope you were with us last week on the Final Five, because we almost swept the board. We had 2 out of 3 on the power play points with Reinhart and Matthews. We hit the goal scorer line A. We hit the side with Washington. We hit the total with the over in Toronto and Buffalo. So we had a really good Final Five last week, and I'm hoping that we can now ride that wave.
Only on SportsGrid.
50 points in a fourth quarter for the Atlanta Hawks. Like, what is going on? It's like circus numbers. What are we doing?
And we sound like 2 old heads complaining. It's a tough watch. It's a tough watch sometimes. I don't mind the shooting. I just know the numbers. Like, when you strictly look at it from the numbers in betting, it's getting really hard to bet.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Ferrall Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
The NBA will take center stage once football stops, and people will watch the NBA playoffs and all that. But the standings are whacked out in the Western Conference. Like, Oklahoma City, Memphis, and the Houston Rockets are the best teams in the conference.
You want to talk about a team with overs and no defense? The Wizards are your team. It's unbelievable. They can't make a total high enough. It's nuts.
Sports Rage tonight. Weeknights 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
And we are back, Ferrall, Coast to Coast on a Monday. Carver and Joe Raineri in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Good to have everybody with us. So going into yesterday, Joe, there was only 2 spots that were still up for grabs. One in the NFC, one in the AFC. The NFC, it was the South champion between the Bucs and the Falcons. Both had a chance to win it at the start of the day. Bucs just needed to win at home against the awful Saints. Should be no problem, right, Joe? I mean, geez, it is what it is. The Saints are awful. They're ready to go home. It was not easy at all for the Bucs. They had their hands full with Spencer Rattler and the Saints, but in the second half, Bucs finally get going. Baker Mayfield to Jalen McMillan, Bucs Radio.
Shot, empty backfield look for Baker Mayfield now. 3 receivers to his right. Good snap, belt high. Looking upfield, flushed out of the pocket. Dances outside, throws the ball upfield. He's got a receiver. Open, caught, touchdown Tampa Bay. Touchdown Tampa Bay. Jalen McMillan, 5th game in a row. He's come up with a touchdown. Fire the cannons. Bucs are on tied at 19-19.
There you go. And the Bucs do get it done. They'd add on as well. Didn't add on enough to cover. But they did add on with the Bucky Irvin touchdown after that. They did get Mike Evans his 1,000th yard to give him 11 straight seasons. Him and Jerry Rice, only guys to do that. I think he got some money too, Joe, out of that, as they talked about to no end, of course, on the broadcast. And that was Brady. So Brady's his buddy doing the game. So he had to mention 1,000 times that Evans. What was it, Joe? I think it was $3 million, right? You only heard it a billion times. $3 million for Evans, and they celebrated like they won the Super Bowl when the guy got the catch at the end. Yep. You would have thought they were in New Orleans a couple weeks from now, Joe. The way they went wild for Mike Evans.
Yeah, and it was great. But they were so fortunate that they even had the chance to get the ball back because the Saints blew it on 4th down. They instead of Irving falling down and taking a knee and then the game is over, he takes it into the end zone and gives the Saints more than enough opportunity to tie the game up and march down the field, which they did a pretty good job of. But they were fortunate enough to get the ball back there with just enough time to roll out the starting offense in a game that was basically over. Could you imagine if that ball would have been picked off or something along those lines, Carver? I can't imagine. The risk was mind-numbing what they were doing there.
Especially when you think about it, Todd Bowles is, and we've talked him up. He's done a great job turning himself into his second chance as a head coach in Tampa. But he's as conservative as it gets. And you know, Joe, he had to be sitting there on the sideline going, man, if this was anybody else, I wouldn't be doing this right now. But I'm going to give this guy a crack at it. And he was able to make the – and you almost kind of – watch the clip again. I thought the guys on the Saints also played about 7 yards off of him. Not as bad as the Strahan, Brett Favre sack from way back in the day, but they were pretty far off of Evans when he went and made that final catch. You know, they all on the field know he's getting paid, Joe. I mean, and that's something that everyone out there they can know and respect. So while they were losing, there was a chance that the Falcons were still alive. But the Falcons, they're one of those teams, Joe. Falcons will always Falcon. And they lose to the Panthers 44-38 in overtime. Now, maybe when they saw they were finished, they let go of the rope a little bit on the field, I'm sure, because they had the score up there the entire night. Forget the Falcons, Joe. I think that they waited too long to switch to Penix. I don't think Raheem Morris is that good of a head coach. I think he's a guy that maybe should get a one and done for the amount of talent that he had this year in Atlanta and didn't finish it. But I want to talk to you about this guy and what he did this year, and that's Bryce Young, because Bryce Young was absolutely left for dead, like finished, like he's not good. He was the number 1 overall pick. He's out. He's not going to be a good quarterback. And what he did over the second half of the season, and he was so into it yesterday. He did the Lamar thing from Saturday, the Curry, no look. He's throwing touchdown passes and looking to the sideline, smiling and celebrating with people. And I think this guy gets the credit for it. Canales had a little bit of a rough start the first couple months. I know they only won 5 games, but it seems like they've got a future with Bryce Young now.
It's huge. It's a great feeling. It allows us to just look at the whole roster, to see what the investments need to be. It helps us to think about free agency and the draft with the lens, knowing we got our guy, and now we can just build this team with the right mentality, and just find the guys that can come in and challenge our roster like we plan on doing every year.
And I think they do have it, Joe. And I think that it's just another example that sometimes we rush these guys a little too much. And sometimes all guys do need to do is sit back for a while. Some fan bases and ownership groups don't have the patience for it. But sometimes if you let a guy sit and look at the game on the NFL level for an extended period like they did in the middle of this year and let Andy Dalton play, look at the results came back after, Joe. Now they can sit there like Dave just said, and they can go into their offseason knowing we have our quarterback. Now we can build around him.
Yeah, and another team that did it right, and I'm not saying Carolina did it right, by the way. I think Carolina, they had to go out and get the right coach to see if this guy was even salvageable without absolutely destroying him above the shoulders. But listen, tell me how this is any different than what we saw last year with Jordan Love, who the last 6 games of the year might have been the greatest 5-6 game stretch a quarterback has had in a very long time, which got him the contract extension, which now all of a sudden there's no question that the Packers have their franchise quarterback. I think we're seeing that now with Bryce Young. It took him a little less time than it took Jordan Love, but hey, sitting behind and figuring it out, being benched for Andy Dalton, we may look back at this and be like, that might have been the greatest thing ever to happen to Bryce Young.
I think if he plays like that next year, they're moving up another rung. They're going to be a 7-9 win team, and then they can take another step even further than that as they continue to go forward. Sometimes there are different ways to develop quarterbacks in the NFL. Ferrall Coast to Coast, Carver High and Joe for Scotty. We're back there. I don't like to toot my own horn, and I know that I'm setting myself up for probably disappointment later tonight, but I hope you were with us last week on the Final Five, because we almost swept the board. We had 2 out of 3 on the power play points with Reinhart and Matthews. We hit the goal scorer line A. We hit the side with Washington. We hit the total with the over in Toronto and Buffalo. So we had a really good Final Five last week, and I'm hoping that we can now ride that wave.
Only on SportsGrid.
50 points in a fourth quarter for the Atlanta Hawks. Like, what is going on? It's like circus numbers. What are we doing?
And we sound like 2 old heads complaining. It's a tough watch. It's a tough watch sometimes. I don't mind the shooting. I just know the numbers. Like, when you strictly look at it from the numbers in betting, it's getting really hard to bet.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Ferrall Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
The NBA will take center stage once football stops, and people will watch the NBA playoffs and all that. But the standings are whacked out in the Western Conference. Like, Oklahoma City, Memphis, and the Houston Rockets are the best teams in the conference.
You want to talk about a team with overs and no defense? The Wizards are your team. It's unbelievable. They can't make a total high enough. It's nuts.
Sports Rage tonight. Weeknights 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
And we are back for El Coast to Coast on a Monday. Carver and Joe Raineri in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us here today. All right, Joe, the other team that, of course, clinched a spot on Sunday, the other spot was that final wild card spot in the AFC, which was up for grabs. Now, Cincinnati put the pressure on Saturday night. Their win over Pittsburgh meant that they needed the Broncos and Miami to lose in order to get themselves in the playoffs. All the Broncos had to do for the third week in a row is win, and that is precisely what they did. 38-0, Joe. They won this football game, as the Chiefs gave you absolutely zero. I'm sure that the Chiefs, it really hurt them, Joe, that they weren't helping out the Bengals and the Miami Dolphins, laying down to let Sean Payton, Bo Nix, and the Denver Broncos get in the tournament for the first time since 2015. So a long time coming for the Broncos. Sean Payton, very proud of his young team.
Young and hungry can sometimes be pretty dangerous, and I think that most NFL seasons are filled with highs and lows, and can you do you have the grit and the fortitude to weather the lows? 0-2 going on the road. We got to get a win at Tampa. That was an important stretch, that East Coast swing. And then when you can have some success, then you can have some confidence, and then it becomes something that can repeat itself.
He's not going to win, Joe. Sean Payton's the coach of the year in the NFL, in my eyes. I'm always a guy that likes to go with who's the coach that got the most out of the least. Who's the coach that took a team to a playoffs that no one thought would be in the playoffs? When your win total's 5.5, no one thought you were going to be in the playoffs this year. And Sean Payton ends up getting the Broncos there. I know everyone loves Kevin O'Connell and Dan Campbell, guys with 14 wins. Joe, I thought Payton did the best job. What he did with Nix, who was, I believe, the last out of the 5 quarterbacks, right, Joe? Was he the last out of all the guys in the first round? What he did with him this year, I thought was unbelievable. Defense played great. What a job by Payton.
Yeah, no, fantastic stuff. A lot of head scratching about Bo Nix when they drafted him. They had to eat all of that money by getting rid of Russell Wilson. There were a lot of question marks with this Denver team. And now to make the playoffs for the first time in 8 years it's been an 8-year drought for this team, which is kind of crazy. It used to be a staple for years. I don't know anybody that would have had Denver at 10 wins. Absolutely nobody. It's unfortunate, though. This is where their season will end coming up here in Orchard Park.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, Joe, that yes, their season will end. Now, as me and Gabe were kind of discussing earlier, that number, and, we'll get into a little further later, but 8.5, look, I think that the Bills are obviously a over touchdown favorite, as they should be. Me and him were saying, the Bills in this wild card round, other than the year that they pasted New England that one time in the freezing, sub-zero temperatures, they've had some spots in these wild card rounds at home in this Alan McDermott era where, the Colts that year with Rivers or the Skylar Thompson Dolphins, you've had some, you're getting over a touchdown. Maybe, Joe. Who knows? They didn't see each other this year. It's going to be a new look for the Bills. They haven't seen Bo Nix. Denver went in there last year with Russell Wilson and beat Josh Allen on Monday Night Football. Anything's possible.
Yeah, well, I'll give you this over the last, what is it, last 5 years?
Not a win.
Yes.
A cover, Joe.
Not a win for a cover. Correct. Home favorites of 9 or more points, by the way, are in the wild card, 10-1 against the number over the last 5 or 6 years. So I have no problem. They're a 8.5-point dog for a reason. I think this is where having a rookie quarterback versus Josh Allen doesn't work in favor of Denver in Orchard Park. I think it's a blowout.
And look, I think this was the best outcome for Buffalo, too. They did not want to see Joe Burrow come walking into Orchard Park. And I don't even, look, they own the Dolphins, but even playing a team for a third time is never ideal. So I think that this probably does set up nicely for them here for this opening weekend of the wild card round. All right, we got more to do in hour 2. We'll start hour 2, though, with our man Adam Kaufman, as yes, Gerard Mayo chopped 1 year in. Mike Vrabel next? We shall see. We'll talk to Adam about it next. Coast to Coast on a Monday. We're back.
We'll be right back. It's time for a SportsGrid 2-minute drill.
Time now to play a little buy or sell. The Kansas City Chiefs, George, will win their 3rd straight Super Bowl. Are you buying or selling?
They do seem to be hitting their stride. All right, they get now, 3.5 weeks off here, get everybody healthy. Mahomes for the ankle, Kelsey gets the rest. Chris Jones, who missed that game on Christmas, now he gets the rest of it. He's an extremely important part of that defense. So they're looking good. They're covering spreads now, something they weren't doing. Now they're actually winning legitimate games. That being said, that offensive line is still bad. All right, and I think there'll be teams that take advantage of that. No, I'm selling. I'm selling here.
I don't even care if I believe this or not. I'm selling. I do not want to see this. I do not want to see the Chiefs win again. This has not been a fun year watching them. They've gotten lucky. They've gotten some calls. No, please no. Jamar Chase will win the receiving triple crown this season. Yards, receptions, and touchdowns. George, you going to buy or sell this?
I'm going to sell this. I'm going to say he's great. He's going to have a lot of great numbers here, but I'm going to say no, he won't get the receiver crown. Maybe 2 out of 3. He'll just miss. He'll do a little Aaron Judge. He won't get the average.
All right, I'll play the buy. I'll play the buy card just to play something different in the end, and he was my best player in fantasy this year, so I'll say buy there. I'm going to skip ahead, Sam, to the last one, the running back here. Bucky Irving, who's been fantastic for Tampa Bay, will be a top 8 running back in drafts next season. Is this buy or sell?
Assuming everybody comes back, Godwin, Evans, Mayfield, I see no reason why they wouldn't. I'm going to buy this, Craig. I'm going to buy. I think Bucky Irving is going to be that guy. It's a heavy passing offense, lots of touchdowns. Buy.
Fantasy Sports Today, your weekend source for year-round fantasy insights 8 a.m. to 11 a.m.